I found out on a Tuesday. Not because I went looking. I want to be clear about that. I was never the type to go through phones or check receipts or follow someone's location. I trusted Mincio. Completely, stupidly, with the kind of trust that doesn't leave room for doubt because doubt would mean admitting that the person you built your entire life around might not deserve it. I found out because my phone was dead and Siha wouldn't stop crying and I needed to check the time for his next feed. That's it. That's the whole story of how it started. I picked up Mincio's phone from the nightstand. The screen lit up with a notification, a name I didn't recognize, and a message that no one sends to a friend. Miss you already. Tonight was everything. I read it twice. Then I put the phone down, picked my son up from the bassinet, and sat in the nursing chair by the window while Sol carried on outside like nothing had happened. 2 months old. Siha was 2 months old and he smelled like milk and warmth and new skin, and I held him against my chest and I breathed and I thought, what do I do with this? What I did was nothing. I know how that sounds. I've turned it over in my head 1,000 times since then. The why of it, the logic, the specific shape of the fear that made me swallow what I knew and smile across the dinner table the next morning like my world hadn't shifted on its axis the night before. People who haven't been there will say I would never. They'll say I would have confronted him immediately. And maybe they would. Maybe they're stronger than I was. But I looked at my 2-month-old son and I thought about what happened after the confrontation, the fight, the leaving, the suddenly being alone with a baby and no sleep and a body that still hadn't recovered, and I chose to wait. I told myself it would burn out. That it was new and temporary, the way those things sometimes are. That Mincio would come to his senses. I told myself the baby would change things. His name, I found out 3 weeks later, was Shin Juno. 25 years old. They'd met at a mutual friend's house party 14 months before Siha was born. I remembered that party. I'd been tired from a long shift and hadn't gone. Mincio had kissed me on the forehead and told me to rest, and I'd fallen asleep on the couch feeling grateful that I had someone like him. Grateful. I found Juno's social media the way you find things you're not supposed to find, accidentally, and then all at once. He was beautiful in that effortless way that makes your stomach drop. 5. The kind of Omega who didn't look like he'd ever had to make himself smaller for anyone. I closed the tab and didn't open it again. The months that followed had a particular quality I still don't have a word for. Mincio was still there. Still coming home, still eating dinner with me, still reaching for me in the night. Still holding Siha at 6 a.m. with that expression he got, soft and slightly stunned, like he couldn't believe something this small existed. On those mornings I thought, see, he loves us. He's still here. It's going to be okay. I started making his favorite meals on weekends. Doenjang jjigae on Saturdays, the way his mother made it. Galbi on Sundays if I had the energy, which I rarely did, but I made it anyway. I laughed more easily at his jokes. I stopped bringing up the late nights. Stopped asking questions I already knew the answers to. I told myself I was being a better partner. I was disappearing. I understand that now, how piece by piece, I was carving away the parts of myself that took up too much space, that argued back, that had needs, that asked where were you and why do you smell different and who is she, except he wasn't even that. He was a he. 25 years old with bright eyes and Mincio's attention in a way I hadn't had in over a year. But I kept disappearing anyway, because the alternative was losing him, and losing Mincio felt unsurvivable in a way that humiliates me now. Park Yujin told me twice. Once when Siha was 3 months old, Chan-su, something is wrong with him, I can see it. And once when Siha was 7 months old with more specific language that I shut down so fast he didn't bring it up again. I wasn't ready to hear it. I wasn't ready because hearing it meant doing something about it, and I had built my entire survival strategy around not doing something about it. I think about the last good weekend a lot. Siha was 11 months old. Mincio took the day off and we went to the park. Just the 3 of us, ordinary, unhurried. Mincio pushed the stroller and I walked beside him and the autumn light was doing something beautiful through the trees and I thought, with my whole chest, we can still be this. We can still be okay. I believed it. I really believed it. I didn't know that 3 weeks later, Shin Juno would give Mincio an ultimatum, me or them, choose, I'm not being a secret anymore, And that Mincio would come home from that conversation, sit across from me at dinner, and eat without tasting a single bite. I didn't know that the bag was already packed. I didn't know any of it yet. But I would. I knew something was wrong before he opened his mouth. That's the thing about loving someone for 3 years. You learn the language of them. The way they hold their shoulders when they're stressed versus when they're guilty. The difference between tired silence and heavy silence. Mincio walked through the door that evening and the air around him was different, and every nerve in my body stood up at once. I was in the kitchen finishing dinner. Siaha was in his high chair, banging a plastic spoon against the tray with the focused enthusiasm of someone who had recently discovered cause and effect. Normal sounds. Normal smells. Doenjang jjigae on the stove because it was a Saturday and I always made his favorite on Saturdays. Mincio set his keys on the counter and didn't say anything. He sat at the table. He looked at Sia. Something moved across his face, something I couldn't name then and have spent a long time naming since. It looked like memorizing. Like someone taking a photograph with their eyes. My stomach twisted so hard I had to set down the ladle. Long day? I asked. My voice came out steady. I was proud of that. Yeah, he said. Long day. We ate dinner. Mincio ate like a man with no appetite pretending to have one. Small bites, long pauses, eyes on his bowl. I talked about Siaha. I always had things to say about Siaha. He'd started pulling himself up on furniture that week, cruising along the edge of the couch with this expression of absolute concentration, and normally Mincio lit up when I told him things like that. That night he just nodded. I bathed Siaha. I went through the whole routine. The little towel with the duck hood, the lotion, the clean pajamas with the bear print. Siaha fought sleep the way he always did, grabbing my finger, refusing to close his eyes, eventually going under mid-protest. I stood over the crib for a moment longer than I needed to. I think part of me already knew that when I walked back out there, something was going to end. Mincio was standing near the bedroom door. Not sitting. Standing. Like he couldn't commit to staying in the room long enough to sit down. We need to talk, he said. 3 words that have ended more lives than people give them credit for. I sat on the couch. I folded my hands in my lap. I told myself, be calm. Be calm. Whatever it is, be calm. I'm leaving, he said. The room tilted. I haven't been happy, Chance. For a long time. I don't think this is working anymore and I think it's better if I... Is it Shinjuno? The silence lasted less than a second. It lasted a lifetime. How do you know that name? My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against my thighs. How long? He looked at the floor. The floor. He couldn't even look at me. About a year. A year. A year ago Siaha wasn't even born yet. A year ago I was 9 months pregnant, swollen and exhausted and so completely certain that we were about to become something permanent and real. A year ago Mincio had held my face in his hands and told me everything was going to be okay. You were already seeing him, I said slowly. When I was pregnant. He didn't answer. You held my hand, I said. My voice was starting to crack and I hated it. I hated the way it sounded, weak and wet. In the delivery room. You held my hand and you cried when Siaha was born and you were already. I couldn't finish the sentence. I don't know when I slid off the couch. I don't remember deciding to. One moment I was sitting and the next I was on my knees on the floor and something had broken open in my chest so completely that I couldn't locate the edges of it. And I begged. I'm not proud of it. I am not ashamed of it either, not anymore. I was a person who loved someone and was losing them and I begged the way any person does when something essential is being taken. Please don't go. Please, Mincio, please. I know I'm not easy, I know we argue, I know I make things hard sometimes but I will change, I promise I will change, I won't bring things up anymore, I won't ask questions, I'll be better, I swear I'll be so much better just please. From the bedroom, Siaha woke up. His cry split the apartment open. Sharp and confused, the cry of a baby who sensed something wrong the way babies do, some frequency adults have learned to ignore. I was gripping the fabric of Mincio's pants with both hands. I could feel myself trembling. I could hear myself promising things that no person should have to promise. I won't argue, I won't ask, I'll disappear further, I'll take up even less space, just stay, just stay, just stay. My mind is made up, Mincio said. Quietly. Gently. Like he was telling me something sad about someone else. He stepped back. Twice. My hands slipped from his pants and found nothing, and I stayed on the floor while he walked to the bedroom. And that's when I saw it. The bag. Already packed. Already zipped. Sitting beside the wardrobe like it had been there for hours. Because it had been. He had packed before dinner. Before the doenjang jjigae I made because it was Saturday and I always made his favorite on Saturdays. He had already decided before he sat down at that table and watched me feed our son. I got up off the floor. I don't know where that came from, some last piece of myself that hadn't dissolved yet. I walked to Sia's room and I picked him up and I held him against my chest while he screamed, and I stood in the doorway and I watched Mincio zip the bag. I didn't say another word. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't destroy whatever was left of me. Mincio paused at the front door. He looked back once. I'll send money. I'm not going to disappear on him. Okay, I said. I'm sorry, Chansu. I looked at him. This man. This alpha. The person I had loved so completely I'd made myself invisible trying to keep him. Close the door on your way out, I said. And he did. I stood in the hallway for a long time after the lock clicked. Sia had gone quiet against my shoulder, worn out from crying, the way babies get, suddenly heavy and boneless with exhaustion. I carried him back to his crib, tucked him in, stood over him for a moment. Then I walked to the bathroom, turned the shower on as hot as it would go, sat down on the tile floor fully clothed, and fell apart. I let myself have that. 30 minutes. That was all. Then I got up. I didn't know yet about the phone call coming in the morning, Mincio's mother, crying, telling me what he'd said when his family begged him to stay. I didn't know what words he had used to describe me. I would find out. His mother called at 8:47 the next morning. I know the exact time because Sia had just finished his bottle and I was burping him over my shoulder, staring at nothing, running on maybe 2 hours of broken sleep and the hollow, floating feeling of someone who cried themselves empty and hasn't refilled yet. I almost didn't answer. I didn't recognize the number at first. Mincio's mother had always called through him, never directly, but something made me pick up. Maybe I needed to hear a voice that wasn't inside my own head. Shansuya. Her voice broke on my name. Just that. Just 2 syllables and she was already crying, and something about that. This woman I had shared holiday meals with, whose son I had loved for 3 years, cracked something open in me that I thought I'd already emptied out. I'm so sorry, she said. I need you to know that we tried. His father and I both tried. We told him, we begged him, Chansu, we told him he had a family that Sia needed. It's okay, I said, because someone had to be steady and it clearly wasn't going to be her. It's not okay. She said it fiercely, through tears. What he did is not okay. And what he said, she stopped. My chest tightened. What did he say? A pause that lasted too long. He told us he was too young to spend the rest of his life with someone he didn't love. The apartment went very quiet. Sia made a small sound against my shoulder. Outside, someone's delivery scooter beeped twice. The refrigerator hummed. Ordinary sounds from a world that had no idea it had just handed me something I would carry for years. Didn't love. Not fell out of love. Not loves differently now. Didn't love. Present tense. Applied to me, to us, to the 3 years I had given him, to the 11 months I had made myself smaller and quieter and easier, to the floor I had kneeled on the night before with my hands around his legs. He had looked his parents in the eye and said he didn't love me. Like I was something he'd never chosen at all. I thanked her. I don't know how, but I did. Calm, quiet, the way I'd learned to function when the inside of me was in freefall. I told her Sia was healthy and that she could see him whenever she wanted. I meant it. None of this was her fault. I hung up and sat on the couch and didn't move for a long time. Park Eugene arrived 20 minutes later. He didn't knock. He had a spare key, had always had one, the kind of friend you hand emergency access to without conditions. He came through the door with 2 grocery bags and took one look at my face and set everything down and just stood there. He didn't say I told you so. I want the record to show that Park Eugene, who had told me so twice, Did not say it once. He took Siaha from my arms. Put him in the playpen. Came back and sat beside me on the couch and said nothing, and that nothing was the kindest thing anyone has ever given me. Eventually I said, he told his parents he didn't love me. Eugen was quiet for a moment. He's a liar, he said simply. People who don't love someone don't need to pack a bag in secret. They don't eat dinner first. They just leave. I didn't answer. I didn't know yet if that made it better or worse. The first month was survival in its most literal form. Eugen stayed for 3 weeks, sleeping on the couch, taking the 2 a.m. shifts twice a week so I could sleep in 4-hour blocks like a normal human. My mother came every other day with food I didn't ask for and didn't turn away. I went back to work at 6 weeks, earlier than I'd planned, but the numbers in my notebook were clear and feelings don't pay rent. Mincio sent money on the 1st of every month. I logged it in a separate column. Spent it only on Siaha, formula, daycare deposit, the new car seat he'd outgrown. I didn't touch it for anything else. Some mixture of pride and practicality that I couldn't fully separate. The days had a shape. That helped. Up at 6. Bottle. Daycare drop-off at my mother's 3 mornings, the center 2 days. Shift at the hotel. Pickup. Dinner. Bedtime. Then the hours between Siaha sleeping and me sleeping where the quiet got very loud. Those hours were the hardest. That's when the thoughts came, not the angry ones, those would have been easier, but the soft ones. The memory of Mincio's voice at 3 a.m. when Siaha was first born, low and wondering, look at him, Chansu, look what we made. The weight of his hand between my shoulder blades on hard days. The way he laughed at things that weren't even that funny but laughed so easily, so completely, that you couldn't help joining in. I missed him. I hated that I missed him. I missed a version of him that I was no longer sure had ever been real. Siaha got a fever at 15 months. 39.4 degrees at 2 a.m. on a Wednesday. I was in the bathroom with him on my lap, pressing a damp cloth to his forehead, watching his small face and trying to remember everything I'd ever read about fever management in toddlers, when to wait, when to worry, where exactly the line was. My hands were shaking. I wanted so badly to not be alone in that bathroom. I called my mother. She answered on the second ring, voice thick with sleep, immediately alert the way mothers are. She talked me through it. Stayed on the phone for 40 minutes. The fever broke around 4 a.m. and I sat on the tile floor with Siaha sweaty and finally sleeping against my chest, and I exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. You're okay, I told myself. He's okay. You're doing this. By month 4, Mincio's transfer didn't come. I checked the account on the 1st. Nothing. Checked again on the 3rd. Nothing. I stared at the number, or the absence of it, and something cold moved through me. Not panic. Something quieter and more dangerous than panic. I didn't call him. I didn't message him. I moved the numbers around in my notebook until they worked without it, and I kept going. The money appeared on the 19th, without explanation or apology. I logged it in the column and said nothing. But I stopped believing in the word consistent when it was applied to young Mincio. And I filed that understanding away carefully, right next to didn't love and already packed, in the part of me that was slowly, quietly, permanently done. Then, for months later, he called. I was washing dishes when my phone lit up on the counter. His name on the screen, still saved, I hadn't changed it, hadn't let myself think too hard about why, and my stomach dropped straight through the floor. I stood there and watched it ring. Picked up on the last possible second before voicemail. Chansu. His voice. But, careful. The specific tone of a man who has rehearsed something. I want to see Siaha. I know I don't have the right to just, I know. But I'm asking. Please. The please landed somewhere it shouldn't have. I closed my eyes. Breathe. And I heard myself say, fine. I'll text you the details. Don't be late. I hung up before he could respond. Then I stood at the sink with the water still running and my heart slamming against my ribs, and I thought, why does he still do this to me? Why, after everything, does his voice still do this? I didn't have an answer. But I was about to find out exactly how dangerous that question was. I told myself it was just a meeting. Neutral location. Public park. 2 hours maximum. I would sit on the bench, Mincio would see Siaha, and I would feel absolutely nothing because I was a person who had chosen to feel nothing about young Mincio, and that choice was final. I believed this completely right up until I saw him walking through the park entrance, and my heart did something deeply inconvenient. He looked like himself. That was the problem. I think I'd been unconsciously hoping for some visible evidence of consequences, dark circles, weight loss, the physical signature of a man who had blown up his family and was suffering accordingly. Instead, he looked rested. He was wearing a coat I didn't recognize, dark gray, well-fitted, and he walked the way he always walked, unhurried, certain, that particular alpha steadiness that used to make me feel safe and now just made my jaw tighten. He spotted us on the bench. Something moved across his face that I couldn't look at directly. I looked at Siaha instead. Here is what I was not prepared for. Siaha had never consciously met his father. He was 13 months old when Mincio left, barely walking, too young to hold onto faces or events. I hadn't shown him photos. I hadn't said the word abioji in our apartment in 8 months. I had protected him, or so I thought, from the shape of what was missing. But biology doesn't care about my plans. Mincio crouched down a few feet away, careful, not rushing, giving Siaha space, and Siaha looked at him. Just looked the way toddlers do, with that wide, uncomplicated assessment. Then he raised both arms. Straight up. The universal language for hold me. Directed at a man he had never consciously met in his short life. Mincio made a sound I felt in my sternum. He picked Siaha up slowly, like something breakable, like something he was terrified of dropping or getting wrong. Siaha grabbed his collar with one small fist and settled in with the calm certainty of a child who had found something familiar in a person he shouldn't remember. Alpha scent. The biological thread between them that I couldn't sever no matter how much I rearranged our apartment or filled it with my mother's cooking and Eugen's loud presence. Siaha knew him somewhere below memory, somewhere I couldn't reach, and watching that recognition happen in real time did something to me that I am not going to describe in detail because even now it costs me something. I looked at my hands in my lap. He looks good, said the part of me I've been fighting since the day he left. Good for him, said the rest of me, firmly. Finally. We sat like that for a while. Mincio on the bench beside me, Sia between us, pointing at pigeons with extreme urgency and demanding responses from both of us in the Babel language he was currently fluent in. It was almost ordinary. That was the dangerous part, how easily it could look ordinary from the outside. A family at a park on a Saturday. A man and an omega and a small child who kept trying to eat gravel. I was not going to think about how it looked from the outside. He's so different, Mincio said quietly. 8 months is a long time at this age, I said. The pause. I know. 2 words. But the weight in them, that specific, helpless weight of someone doing math they don't want to finish, sat between us on the bench and I let it sit there. I wasn't going to carry it for him. I was done carrying things that belonged to young Mincio. He lingered at the end. I'd said 2 hours and we were already at 2 hours 15, and I'd gathered Siaha's bag and was brushing crumbs off his jacket when I felt Mincio's energy shift. That old awareness, the way I'd always been able to read him, even when reading him was bad for me. He was building up to something. Chansu. Mincio. I made a mistake. I straightened up. Siaha was on my hip, playing with the zipper of my jacket, uninterested in adult proceedings. I looked at Mincio directly for the first time since he'd arrived and wished immediately that I hadn't because he was looking at me with an expression I recognized, open, unguarded, the face he made when he actually meant something. I had missed that face. I hated that I'd missed it. I know, I said. I don't mean, I'm not asking you to, he stopped. Ran a hand through his hair. I just need you to know that I understand what I did. All of it. The year before. The way I left. The bag, I said. He closed his eyes. Yes. The delivery room. A longer pause. Like I'd pressed on something that hadn't healed. Yes. I shifted Siaha to my other hip and kept my voice even because I had practiced this. Not this conversation specifically, but the version of myself who could have it without coming apart. Do you know what I did while you were with him? I stopped telling you when you hurt me. I made your favorite food every weekend. I laughed at things that weren't funny. I convinced myself I was being a better partner. I paused. I was disappearing. And you watched me disappear and you left anyway. His jaw was tight. Chon-Soo. I'm not saying it to hurt you. I'm saying it so you understand that there's nothing to come back to. I'm not who I was in that apartment. And whoever I'm becoming, she doesn't have a door open for you. And if I want to try, there is no version, I said clearly, where I take you back. I need you to stop waiting for one. The silence that followed was long and complete. Then, quietly, what about Shin Juno? Something shifted in his expression when I said the name, a flicker of something I couldn't read. Guilt maybe, or something more complicated. What about him? Minseo said carefully. Are you still with him? He looked at me for a long moment. No, he said. We ended things. I nodded slowly. When? 2 months ago. 2 months ago. For months after he left us. 6 months into the relationship he had blown up his family to have. My mind did the math automatically and I felt nothing. Or something I was choosing to call nothing, which I've learned is not the same thing but is close enough to function on. Okay, I said. Chon-Soo. Same time next week, I said. And I picked up the bag. And I walked away. I made it to the subway entrance before my legs started shaking. I sat down on the top step and held Sia tight and breathed through it. He patted my cheek with one small hand, his version of comfort, and I pressed my forehead to his and thought, it's fine. I'm fine. That changes nothing. But later that night, after Sia was asleep, I found myself wondering, why 2 months ago? What had happened 2 months ago? Whether Shin Juno had been the one to end it or whether Minseo had, and why, after everything, that question still had the power to keep me awake. I reached for my phone. Put it back down. Picked it up again. There was a message from a number I didn't recognize. I think you know who I am. I'm sorry to reach out like this. But there's something you need to know about why Minseo and I ended, and I think you deserve to hear it from me. I stared at the screen. My heart was slamming against my ribs. It was from Shin Juno. I stared at that message for a long time. Long enough for the screen to go dark. Long enough for me to pick the phone back up, read it again, set it face down on the mattress, and then pick it up a third time like the words might have rearranged themselves into something less destabilizing. They hadn't. I think you deserve to hear it from me. My first instinct was to delete it. Block the number, roll over, go to sleep, and file Shin Juno under the long list of things that were no longer my problem. I had built that list carefully over 8 months. I was proud of it. My second instinct won. I typed back, how did you get this number? The reply came faster than I expected. Like he'd been waiting. Minseo's phone. Before we ended things. I'm sorry, I know this is strange. I wouldn't reach out if I didn't think it mattered. My chest was tight. I sat up against the headboard in the dark, Sia's baby monitor casting its small green light across the ceiling, and I thought about what kind of person messages the Omega their ex cheated with and decides it matters. I thought about what kind of information would make someone do that. What do you want to tell me? I typed. He asked if we could meet in person. Not at my home. He was clear about that, almost careful about it, like he understood exactly how much of an intrusion this already was. A cafe. Public. Somewhere I could leave easily. I said yes before I could talk myself out of it. We met on a Thursday afternoon. I left Sia with my mother and took the subway 3 stops and sat in the corner of a small cafe in Mapo with my hands wrapped around an Americano I wasn't drinking, and I waited. He was younger than I expected, even knowing his age. 25 looked different in person than it did on a phone screen. He was slight, well-dressed, with the careful composure of someone who had rehearsed being calm and was mostly pulling it off. He sat down across from me and looked at me directly, and I looked back, and we both existed for a moment in the particular discomfort of 2 people who have never met but know everything about each other. Thank you for coming, he said. You said it mattered, I said. So, talk. He wrapped both hands around his own cup. Looked down briefly, then back up. He ended it with me, he said. Not the other way around. I went very still. I know that's not what he told you. He told me you ended things, I said carefully. 2 months ago. Juno shook his head. Slowly. With the expression of someone delivering news they've been carrying too long. He ended it. And the reason he gave me, he paused. He said he'd realized he still had feelings for you. That he'd made a mistake leaving. That he wanted to try to fix things. The cafe noise continued around us. Someone's order was called. A door opened, closed. Completely ordinary sounds from a world that had no idea what was happening at this corner table. My throat was dry. He said that, I said. Word for word. Juno's voice was even. Not bitter, not trying to cause damage, just tired. The tiredness of someone who had processed their own grief already and arrived at the other side of it. I was angry at first. Obviously. I gave him an ultimatum. I pushed him to leave you. I thought. He stopped. Exhaled. I thought if he chose me properly in the open, it would feel different. That it would feel like something real. Did it? Something crossed his face. For a while. And then it just felt like I was living in the space he'd cleared out. Like he was still, like part of him was always somewhere else. The tightness in my chest had spread up into my throat. He talked about you, Juno said quietly. Not often. He wasn't obvious about it. But sometimes, when he didn't realize I was paying attention, he used a different voice. Softer. Like whatever he was remembering was something he was still deciding what to do with. I set my coffee cup down because my hands had started trembling and I didn't want him to see. Why are you telling me this? My voice came out steady. I was grateful for that. Because I was the reason your family broke apart? He said simply. I know I wasn't the only reason. He made choices, I know that. But I pushed. I pressured him. And I've had to live with that. He looked at me. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just thought you should know the full picture. Not the version he gave you. The full picture. I sat with that for a moment. The full picture was this. Mincio had left me for someone he eventually left. Had told that person he still had feelings for me. Had come back into my orbit asking to see Sia, lingering at doorways, looking at me in parks with that open, unguarded expression I'd told myself meant nothing. It hadn't been nothing. I didn't know what to do with that. I walked to the subway in the cold and I turned it over and I thought about what Eugen had said months ago at the kitchen table. People who don't love someone don't pack a bag in secret. They just leave. And I thought about Mincio's mother on the phone, crying. He said he was too young to spend his life with someone he didn't love. Except Juno was sitting in a cafe telling me Mincio had used a different voice when he talked about me. Softer. Like something unfinished. I wasn't angry. That was the thing that surprised me most about that walk to the subway. I kept waiting for the anger and it didn't come. What came instead was something quieter and more complicated. Something that felt almost like grief for a different version of events. For the version where Mincio had been honest. Where I had been honest. Where two people who apparently meant something to each other hadn't spent years communicating entirely in silence and avoidance and packed bags. We had both failed each other. That didn't mean I owed him a second chance. But it meant the story I'd been carrying, the clean version, the one where he simply didn't love me and never had and there was nothing to mourn, that story wasn't true either. And I needed to grieve the truer, Messier version before I could put it down properly. Mincio called that evening. I watched his name on the screen and thought about Juno's voice saying softer, like something he was still deciding. I picked up. I need to ask you something, I said. And I need you to tell me the truth. The pause. Okay. Did you end things with Juno because of me? The silence lasted 4 full seconds. Who told you? Answer the question, Mincio. Another silence. Longer this time. The kind that already contains the answer. Yes, he said quietly. My eyes closed. I see, I said. Chansu. I'm not angry, I said. And I meant it. I'm not angry and I'm not opening any doors. But I needed to know the truth. The whole truth. Not the version that was easiest for you to give me. I know I don't deserve. No, I said gently. You don't. But that's not why I called. Good night, Mincio. I hung up. Sat in the quiet of my apartment. Sia was asleep. The city hummed outside. And I held the full, complicated, unsimple truth of what we had been to each other, and I let myself grieve it. Not the lie. The real thing. The version that had actually existed, underneath all the silence and the fear and the disappearing. I grieved it properly for the first time. And then I put it down. Sia is 2 years and 3 months old, and he has very strong opinions about giraffes. Specifically, he believes they are the greatest animals on Earth, that they are all named ramen, and that anyone who disagrees is wrong and should be informed of this immediately. I know this because he has told me approximately 40 times since Mincio dropped him home an hour ago, each retelling more passionate than the last, complete with arm gestures and the kind of eye contact that demands full agreement. I gave him full agreement every single time. This is my life now. This specific, loud, beautiful, exhausting life. And sitting here on the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinet and my son climbing on my legs to tell me about giraffes for the 41st time, I am aware, in a way that still catches me off guard sometimes, that I am genuinely happy. Not performing it. Not managing toward it. Actually, simply, quietly happy. I didn't know if I'd get here. There were months when I wasn't sure the floor of that shower was something I'd fully climb out of. Months when happy felt like a word that applied to other people. People who hadn't kneeled on kitchen floors begging someone to stay. People who hadn't made themselves invisible and been left anyway. But here I am. Giraffe opinions and all. Eugen asked me last week, over ramen at his place, completely without preamble, "Are you happy?" I opened my mouth to give him the automatic answer. Yeah, I'm good, Sia's great, work is fine, and then I stopped. Because Eugen has known me for 11 years and he wasn't asking about Sia or work. He was asking about me. The interior version. The one that had gone very quiet for a long time. I thought about it honestly. Yeah, I said. I actually am. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded, like I'd passed something. Like he'd been waiting for that answer to be true and had finally gotten it. Good, he said, and went back to his ramen. That was it. No big moment. No music. Just Eugen, satisfied, slurping noodles, and me realizing that the thing I'd been rebuilding quietly for over a year had become something real enough for other people to see. The arrangement with Mincio has settled into something I didn't have a word for at first. Not friendship. Not warmth exactly. Something more functional and more honest than either. Two people who share the most important thing in their lives, learning the specific language of that. He knows Sia's schedule now. Knows which songs he wants at bedtime and which snacks he'll accept and which ones end up on the floor. Knows to bring the small blue blanket when he picks him up because Sia won't sleep without it in an unfamiliar place. He shows up on time. Every time. That consistency, the thing I'd stopped believing he was capable of, turned out to be real when the stakes were right. When it was for Sia, I noticed. I didn't say anything. But I noticed, and I filed it somewhere that wasn't resentment. Tonight's handoff was the zoo Saturday. Mincio appeared at my door at 6:47 p.m. with Sia asleep on his shoulder, one small fist curled in his collar, the blue blanket trailing from his other hand like a flag of surrender. The giraffe sticker on Sia's jacket. The expression on Mincio's face, tired, careful, and something else underneath that I've learned to simply acknowledge and move past. He talked about the giraffes for 40 minutes straight, Mincio said quietly, trying not to wake him. He told another child at the zoo that the giraffe's name was Ramen. The child's mother looked very concerned. Something moved in my chest. Almost a laugh. Almost. It's a naming phase, I said, just as quietly. He named the mop kimchi last week. And there it was, that exhale between us. That almost laugh that we've stumbled into a few times now, accidental and brief, the byproduct of two people who created a person together and occasionally find him equally ridiculous. It was not forgiveness. It was not a reopening. It was just human. Unexpectedly, simply human. I took Sia from his arms. The transfer, Sia shifting in his sleep, settling against me with the boneless trust of a child who has never once doubted he would be caught, happened the way it always did. Smoothly. Like we'd practiced it long enough that our bodies had given up being awkward about it. Mincio's hand brushed my shoulder in the handoff. Neither of us acknowledged it. Same time next week, I said. He nodded. Stayed one beat longer than necessary in the doorway. That old habit, the lingering, the almost saying something, and then he seemed to catch himself. Seemed to remember what I'd told him clearly and what I had meant clearly and what he had, slowly and painfully, accepted. He's good, Mincio said. Not about next week. Just a statement. Quiet and complete. You've done a really good job with him, Chansu. I looked at him. I thought about the kitchen floor. The packed bag. The shower tiles. The notebook with the numbers. The 2 a.m. fever. The months of mornings before sunrise. Every single thing I had built with my hands and my stubbornness and my absolute refusal to let my son grow up in the wreckage of what his father left behind. I know, I said. Not unkindly. Just true. I knew. I didn't need him to tell me, but I wasn't going to pretend the words cost me nothing either. They landed somewhere real and I let them. Mincio nodded once. Sepek. Good night, he said. Good night, I said. The door closed. Siaha stirs against my shoulder as I carry him to his room. Half awake, the way he gets, that dreamy in-between state where he says whatever is floating closest to the surface of his small, very full mind. Appa, he murmurs. I'm here, I say. Ramen, he says seriously, eyes still closed. Yes, I say. The giraffe. I know. Big, he adds with great authority. Then he's asleep again. I stand over his crib for a moment after I lay him down. This child. This specific, loud, giraffe-obsessed child who has his father's hands and my stubbornness and absolutely nobody's patience. This person I made and kept and carried through everything. I brush the hair from his forehead. Yeah, I whisper. Big. Later, I'm in the kitchen making ramen, for myself, because it's late and I'm hungry and I don't need a reason beyond that. And I catch my reflection in the dark window above the sink. I look like myself. Not the version from 3 years ago, anxious and accommodating and quietly disappearing. Not the version from 14 months ago, on a shower floor with the water running. Tired around the edges in the way of all single parents. But present. Solid. Standing in my own kitchen in my own apartment that I rearranged exactly how I wanted it, making ramen at 9 p.m. because I felt like it. The city hums outside. Siaha breathes on the monitor. And I think about the question Eugen asked me. Are you happy? I think about the version of myself who kneeled on that floor and promised to be smaller, quieter, easier. Who believed that love meant making yourself disappear until someone decided to stay. I think about what I know now that I didn't know then. That staying upright is its own kind of love. That building something from nothing is its own kind of answer. That the person worth fighting for was always me. Was always us, me and this small boy and the life we made in the space that was left. I turn off the stove. Carry my bowl to the couch. Put on something quiet on the television. And I sit in my own life, full, imperfect, genuinely mine, and I eat my ramen. I don't look back. I don't need to.